Hello from the storytelling Elm Tree root system. This is a part of the tree that I never thought we would see, but with Storm Arwen, a north wind just came right across the field I'm looking out over now and got underneath just the bottom of our beloved Trinity storytelling old elm tree and uprooted the whole thing, as you can see. It's our only bit of damage at Nether Springs that can't be repaired. And I don't know what it means. I keep asking God, this is my number one symbol, my personal number one symbol of hope and resiliency during the pandemic. I thought this old tree has lived through its own pandemic of its own species and is still standing and has stood for hundreds of years, and it was like, we can get through this. We can get through this. And yet, it has fallen. It's fallen. But its story isn't over. One of the things that I have been thinking about with trees is how all that we're learning about the ways they communicate with one another and take in information and share resources is all underground. It's beautiful, but it's hidden because the roots, this is the way that it takes in. These are its receptors. So, little confession though, I mean, please don't, well, you can judge me if you want for it, but I will tell you. I loved this tree, and I always, when I went to say hello to it, I would go right to what I perceived was the heart in the center of its single trunk before it split out into three. And I had the most wonderful, indentation and really rich, thick moss there. So I'd put my head against that moss and just speak words of blessing and thankfulness for it into that bit of the heart. But I kind of knew if I ever really wanted to communicate with the tree, I mean, really, if you see what I mean, it was going to be through its root system, because those are where the receptors are. So I just thought, well, that will never happen. And yet here we are. All of that is exposed. And I think when I look at it now, I think of all the receptors, almost like little nerve endings. This is how it gets information. This is how it gives information. And you can just see it's immense. It's immense. It's wide. And of course it would have been building up over hundreds of years. So, and I have to say, as I looked at its, if you like, its receptor bit uncovered, I thought about how I felt in the pandemic and this recent storm that has hit the northeast in particular, which I think of as a hurricane, not a storm. What is it? That when it's 111 miles per hour, that's just not a storm. This has been big. But the way I have felt is like the normal things that protect me and cover up all my sensors, all my nerves have been exposed at times, as I have been upturned, as we have been upturned, and all this has been exposed, which has both enabled me to pick up information and pick up pain and share things, but also made me very, very raw, exposed and unprotected in many ways from the normal things of life. And it strikes me that this tree, sign of hope and resiliency, is now also a sign of vulnerability. And of course, in its place where it was vulnerable to a northern, very strong wind. I don't know what it means. I don't know how I feel other than a million different things. I'm probably putting too much into it. But at the same time, it's not nothing. And it's also one thing I do feel is it's not the end of the story. It's not the end of the story. Because all of the stories that we have planted lovingly and shared around this tree are in the earth and will return to the earth with the help of chainsaws and later fungi and some graft on our part. The tree will be cleared. It's not the end of the wood. We do pray that the wood, we're thinking about things that we might make with some of the wood that we're able to keep behind, but we're also some of the wood will probably be wood chipped and go back into heating Nether Springs with our biomass heater. And once this bit of site is reclaimed, we'll replant a new tree, perhaps. We'll take one of its offspring from nearby, if it's not too old, and put it down where it was. The things that were given from the old tree will be in the earth. Maybe we'll make a storytelling chair and tell new stories in this little spot in our woodland. I think nature teaches us this is just part of the thing, and there's letting go, and there's replanting, there's sowing, and there's reaping, there's standing, and there's falling. And also, one of the things that we learn, of course, through Jesus is death and resurrection. This is the cycle of life. It's just a very sad part of the cycle, and best if you can bear it to go through it. That's the only way to the other side. So, signing off from Nether Springs, where my first pandemic leadership talk was given, and now this one from another side of the same tree. Go well.